The film begins by showing the city of Venice in Italy in 1947, and there, we will be introduced to a famous detective who decides to retire named Hercule Poirot. His decision to retire cannot be accepted by some people, because indeed, they still really want Poirot to handle their case. There we will also be introduced to Poirot's bodyguard named Vitali. On his holiday, Vitali said that there was a woman who wanted to meet Poirot, on the grounds that there was something very important that might make Poirot interested, and gave him one apple as a sign. With the sign of an apple, Poirot realized that the woman in question was a famous book writer named Arianna. During the meeting, they discussed their travels so far. Then Arianna showed him a news item about accusations of fraud under the guise of witchcraft, which was done by Joyce Reynolds in 1935 when he was still young. Even though at first Arianna was a skeptical person, didn't believe in the supernatural, her views changed when she saw Joyce Reynolds. Now, she was able to successfully reveal the facts of all events in a very unlikely way. Arianna then invites Poirot to come watch the séance session that Reynolds will hold right on Halloween night, in the hope that Poirot can reveal whether all the events are real, or just a trick of deception, and prove that Reynolds is indeed a fraud. In the evening, now they are in the palace of the opera diva named Romana Drake, in the legendary rumors circulating. Before it became the palace occupied by Rowena, the place was an orphanage which has a story, where all the orphaned children starve to death and are locked up in one room. But now, Rowena Drake's palace is holding a Halloween party with the orphans, and several nuns are seen watching over them. There we will be introduced to the beautiful opera diva, the owner of the house named Rowena Drake, and also her personal assistant named Olga. Olga seems to really like and admire the novel written by Arianna. Not long after that, Poirot approached Arianna. He asked why a diva could choose to live here and not use her money well. Arianna then said that from the stories circulating, everyone who has been here always experiences disturbances and problems in their lives. And legend says it is revenge for the children who died locked up in the house. A child's shadow will be visible and darkness will cover the house. And this tragedy has also been felt by Rowena Drake, who lost her daughter 1 year ago. And right this night, after the Halloween party was over, Rowena had called Psychic Reynolds to summon her daughter's spirit and ask about what really happened to her. However, Poirot still didn't believe it. Not long after, Olga told Rowena that Reynolds had come, with the appearance of a powerful psychic accompanied by his personal assistant. Suddenly Reynolds said that the house contained many very sad bad memories. Then, Reynolds asked Rowena to conduct a séance session in his daughter's room on the 2nd floor. Hearing that, Rowena was surprised because Reynolds could tell where her daughter's room was. And before they had a séance session, Reynolds approached Arianna and said that Arianna's presence with Detective Poirot would not be able to prove and embarrass him to the media that he had committed fraud, and he said that in this séance, Poirot will find out the answer to his doubts. But Poirot's response at that time was unexpected, and very crazy in my personal opinion. Poirot said that he had lost his belief in the existence of God, and if indeed God, ghosts and impossible things existed, how can God allow bad things like murder and injustice in this world to continue? Because he is supposed to be the creator. He is very capable of doing the things he is supposed to do, and suddenly a decorative lamp falls which makes the situation suddenly become silent. Because of that incident, the Halloween party ended dramatically and made the children from the orphanage decide to leave, while Poirot, still thinking logically, and told Arianna that the ceiling holding the lamp had cracked, causing the lamp to fall. After that, Alice's ex-fiancé, Maxime Gerard, came to the house. Rowena, who saw Gerard's ex, immediately threw him out, because she thought it was Gerard who had made Alice sick because he had abandoned her, while Gerard was alone, thought that Rowena had gotten in the way and damaged the relationship between the two of them. Then Gerard said he could come because he had received an anonymous invitation asking him to attend Alice's séance, even though Rowena didn't seem to accept it. Finally she allowed Gerard to join in the mystical session. In that session we will be introduced to Mr. Ferrier and his son named Leopold. Ferrier is a doctor who has been treating Alice for a long time. Before treating Alice, Ferrier was a doctor who treated the typhus outbreak during the Second World War. When the séance session finally started, Reynolds was in the middle and surrounded by 6 people who were present at the session, including Olga, Rowena, Dr. Ferrier, Leopold, Ariana, and former detective Hercule Poirot. Reynolds tries to interact with Alice's spirit and asks if she is here with them, and suddenly, the typewriter presses the letter Y by itself, which indicates that Alice is with them. Seeing that, of course, it makes everyone present in the panic room, while Poirot himself still looks like he can't believe it and is trying to find out what happened. Until finally, Poirot discovered something odd and stopped the mystical session. Then he opened the chimney and out came another of Reynolds' assistants whose job was to control the typewriter with a magnetic switch that could be controlled remotely. Then Poirot said that before the session started, he noticed a new scratch on the hole in Alice's bedroom door, which indicated that the door had been pried open by someone, and that was his guess, confirmed by the presence of footprints in the chimney. Poirot, who then revealed the strange incident, then told Rowena not to continue the session, and suddenly the strange incident reappeared and made Reynolds' chair spin. In that situation, Reynolds appeared to be possessed by Alice's spirit. In Alice's voice, Reynolds said that he had been killed by someone who was among them. And the session ended with a fact: Alicia Drake did not commit suicide. Some of them believed that it was Alice's voice. Even Rowena, who was her biological mother, also believed that that's Alice. But not for Hercule Poirot. Even though strange things are happening before his eyes, he is still figuring out his logic. How it all happened and thinks it's all just a fake trick. But Ariana convinces Poirot to accept it all and start to believe that there is something else behind human life, with logic that trumps everything. Poirot is still stubborn and doesn't believe in it all. Even when he met Reynolds, he accused Reynolds of being a very skilled con artist, and of using other people's sadness for his benefit. But again Reynolds denied it and said that the pain he had felt all this time was real, and the screams of each spirit he summoned made him feel the suffering that the spirit had experienced. Hearing that, Poirot then asked Reynolds whether during the spirit summoning session, Reynolds could see who killed Alicia Drake, and Reynolds answered that he still couldn't be sure because the mystical session had finished, and invites Poirot to come back tomorrow evening for the next session. But Poirot said horror stories were only made for children. Then Reynolds answered that horror stories could also make children happy and live their lives without fear, and he asked Poirot to be able to live life and accept things that might not make sense to him, like Catherine, who can believe that the existence of God exists. Hearing the words Catherine spoken from Reynolds, of course made Poirot surprised, because indeed, Catherine was the late wife of Hercule Poirot. Reynolds then put on Poirot his mask and cloak, and asked him to enjoy Halloween night before leaving. With those clothes, Poirot then went through the house and found an apple. In Halloween there is a culture of apple bobbing, that is, picking up apples in the water without using hands, and when Poirot did that, suddenly someone tried to kill him by buried his head. Luckily for him, when Poirot was unconscious, he was saved by Vitaly. In that situation, Poirot realized, with the Reynolds cloak he was wearing, the murderer thought Poirot was Reynolds, and not long afterwards suddenly, Reynolds was found tragically dead. In that situation, they now don't understand what actually happened in that house. Olga, who is a former devout nun, is very confident in mystical things and attributes it all to the evil spirit that lives in the house. But on the other hand, Gerard didn't believe it all and thought that Reynolds was frustrated and decided to commit suicide. Some of them decided to leave the house, but suddenly Hercule locked all the doors and asked Vitaly and Gerard to be on guard so that no one could leave the house, before he could find out and investigate what had really happened. The investigation and interrogation of former detective Hercule Poirot finally began. He made a list and saw the crime scene where Reynolds was killed, and in his interrogation he asked Ariana who had found Reynolds' body for the first time. After that, he asked Rowena, "Is there another room above the balcony?" And there it turned out to be Alice's favorite flower garden. Rowena also said that she and Alice produced honey for their own consumption, and after Alice died, she left the garden neglected and died. Poirot then asked why he could call Reynolds, and Rowena answered that she knew Reynolds from a magazine and was interested to know about his daughter's death. Long story short, Poirot had asked Olga and the others, until finally, when he asked Dr. Ferrier, he thought he heard a child screaming from the house. After that he decided to go to the bathroom. With disbelief, Poirot felt his hands shaking and suddenly he saw Alice's reflection in the mirror, and when he wanted to go out, he met Leopold, the son of Dr. Ferrier. At that time Leo said that all this time, he was the one who could control his father's emotions and mentality. Leopold is a child who is required to mature prematurely because of a situation, because at this time, the mental condition of Dr. The ferry was damaged after returning to deal with a typhus outbreak in the Second World War. Then the interrogation continued with Reynolds' two assistants. At that time they finally admitted that all the séance sessions were just a hoax, and they had only been following what Reynolds ordered. All this was done because they felt indebted to Reynolds who had saved them and gave them false identities to survive, and their real goal was to go to Missouri to live freely and achieve the dreams. Hearing that, Poirot then concluded that Reynolds' two assistants had used it for their own benefit. And maybe, they were both the perpetrators of Reynolds' murder, because that way, they could be free and control their property. Because they were trying to escape, the two of them now looked tired, and suddenly, Poirot heard a child's voice, and thought that there was someone else in the house. Not long after that he saw a shadow and approached him. And there, he saw a girl who was hiding, and thought that the child was one of the orphans who was left alone. In that situation Poirot asked, did he see someone pushing Reynolds down? But before the child answered, Ariana suddenly came, and made the child suddenly disappear. Poirot, who was still confused, felt something strange. And suddenly they heard a bang from the house, and after they found out, the source of the sound came from the basement, which even Rowena herself didn't know existed, which turned out to be the legendary place where the orphanage children were locked up. And the sound of the bang was just the sound of a storm causing the wood to hit the wall of the house. But Dr. Ferrier, who was in the room, suddenly panicked, making him mentally disturbed. Gerard, who tried to calm him down, was actually beaten by Dr. Ferrier. After things calmed down, Dr. Ferrier was taken into the music room to rest, and Rowena suggested locking the room and giving the key to Poirot. Then, Poirot and Ariana are seen interrogating Gerard. Poirot asks about the invitation that brought Gerard here, and after Gerard shows the invitation, Poirot gets a vision of the letters that form the word apple. After piecing together all the strange events he had experienced in the house, Poirot finally got the answer to all of it, and in fact, not long before Vitaly became Poirot's bodyguard, he was a security guard at Rowena Drake's house. Even the one who lifted Alice's body from the river was Vitaly. That's not enough. It turns out that all this time Ariana and Vitaly have been working together for their own benefit. The letter sent to Maxime Gerard was Ariadne's work. And a strange incident happened. Inside the house. It has been carefully planned by both of them. What can be concluded? Ariana and Vitaly have worked together to make the situation in the house into a horror drama. Because that is Ariana's goal, is to get story material for the book he is going to write, and intended to make a retired detective Poirot the main character who looks ridiculous with the mystical things he experiences. But the murder of Reynolds was something they didn't plan, and at this moment, Poirot is still thinking, Alice and Reynolds' deaths have something to do with the two of them. And suddenly, Reynolds' assistant came and asked Poirot to open the music room, and there, Ferrier, who was killed with a knife in his back. The most impossible thing could happen again, and this incident confirmed that it was not Ariana and Vitaly's doing. And in her investigation, Olga, who believes in mystical things, told Poirot about Alice before she died, that at that night, she heard the sound of footsteps and also voices whispering in her head. At that time, she saw Alice who was conscious, fell asleep before he left home, and he concluded, Alicia wakes up after he leaves and decides to jump to end her life. In that room, Poirot saw a photo of Alicia as a child, and when he saw it clearly, It turned out that the little child he had met was the form of Alicia as a child. With curiosity, Poirot then rushed to Alicia's room, and suddenly, snippets of Alicia's shadow appeared again and made the mirror break. Then, Alice's pet bird suddenly gave a clue by breaking a cup, and there he saw a torn photo of Gerard. In this way, Poirot finally got all the answers to the irregularities and evil plans that had occurred in the house, not just about one murder, but 3 murders committed by the same person, and among all the people present that night, only Maxime Gerard and Olga Yangi don't know what really happened. As we know, Ariana and Vitaly are working together to plan to make a mystery horror drama as material for the material in a book that he will publish, and make Hercule Poirot the main character. Meanwhile, Reynolds' 2 assistants planned to escape and take all the treasures they had collected so far. However, something unexpected happened. They didn't think that Reynolds could be killed tonight. And in fact, the one who killed Reynolds and Dr. Ferrier is Rowena Drake, the opera diva who also killed her own child, Alicia Drake. Rowena poisoned her own child with the poisonous flower honey she planted. The honey is called del bal, which comes from Turkey, just 1 spoonful. This will make Alicia's body weak, have a fever and also have hallucinations. And Rowena's goal in doing all that was just to make Alice forget about Gerard and depend on him again and not want to let him go. Even though she knows that Alicia is now an adult, she always measures every dose to make Rowena look sick and can't meet Gerard. And in the end, Olga woke Rowena, who was sleeping, and took her place to accompany Alice. And that's where the tragedy happened. Right in the middle of the night, Alicia screamed and hallucinated. Olga, who thought that Alice was possessed, then gave her tea with a very large dose of honey. Without knowing, she had given Alice poisoned honey, and the real cause of Alice's death was an overdose of poisonous honey made by Olga. And when Rowena saw Alice, who was dead, she realized a legend about the darkness in the house which was told by Olga, by making scratch marks on Alice's back. Then she threw Alice's body into the river. After that incident, the police and others simply believed what had happened, because indeed, from Ferrier's examination, nothing was found that suspected Alice's death. But not long after, Rowena received a letter threatening blackmail from someone, who said, "I know about poison, pay me to keep my mouth shut, or the world will find out everything." Rowena continued to send money to people who threatened her until the money ran out. In that situation, Rowena then thought of a way to be free from this threat. At that time she thought maybe Dr. Ferrier was the one who had threatened him, because he was the one who had examined Alice's body. On the other hand, Reynolds, who wanted to profit from a tragedy, carried out his deception and sent a letter to Rowena, saying that he could find out the cause of Alice's death. With this increasingly complicated situation, Rowena suspects Dr. It was Ferrier and Reynolds who had been blackmailing him all this time, and he planned a Halloween session as the night where he would finish them both off, because that's the only way horror story about Alice will wake up and be able to free her from the threat of blackmail. Poirot can tell that it all started from the incident that almost caused him to die because he was wearing Reynolds' cloak, but after Rowena realized that Reynolds was upstairs, he rushed over to him and pushed Reynolds from above. Then he rushed back to the music room to meet Olga. And the incident of the murder of Dr. Ferrier was very surprised. Dr. Ferrier, who at that time was locked in the music room, got a telephone call from Rowena, who threatened to kill Leopold if Ferrier didn't stab himself. With mental conditions and the influence of hallucinations from the tea given by Rowena, Ferrier finally decided to commit suicide to save his son. And in fact, Poirot can experience hallucinations and see strange things because Ariana accidentally gave Poirot tea containing poisonous honey that she found in the kitchen. That's why Poirot always felt anxious about what had happened, because her rotten plan had been revealed. Rowena then tried to escape onto the balcony of the house. Seeing that, Poirot of course chased her. In a cornered state, Rowena said that she didn't want to lose her daughter. And suddenly Poirot saw the figure of Alice pulling Rowena until she fell into the river. The next day, Rowena was found dead and taken with the bodies of Reynolds and Ferrier by the police. And the real fact is, the person who sent the letter and blackmailed Rowena Drake this time Was little Leopold? He deliberately did it all just to prove his theory after reading a note from his father, which said that the daughter of an opera diva had died because of poisoned honey. And as a child with an adult mind, he used the money to pay all the bills and needs of his father, because indeed, Feria is not well enough to do the job. Olga then volunteered herself as Leopold's nanny and took care of him, while Reynolds' 2 assistants were finally free and will get the original passport with Olga's help. Ariana, who looked annoyed, told Poirot that she would not put Poirot's name and his story in all the books he was going to write. Then he asked, how could Poirot be able to uncover all that without any help? And he felt that Poirot solved the case with the help of the supernatural in the house. And Poirot answered, whether they're real or not, we just need to make peace with them, and live our lives in peace now. After that, Poirot returned to his house and saw that there were still many clients waiting for him. But this time, he deliberately left the door open, which indicates that Hercule Poirot decided to return to living his life as a detective, and is ready to solve the next cases.